you all. Welcome again to the second Agromining Convention Agromin virtual platform. We hope you have enjoyed the lunch and that you also had the possibility to visit the stand with the proposals from the companies and organizations that are working with us in this technological virtual fair. This afternoon, we are going to discuss a new topic, governance for the economic reactivation and new development of the country. Before we begin the blog, we would like to reiterate that we have simultaneous interpretation in English and Quechua. When you join the main room, you can select Entrar, so you will listen to the presentations in Spanish. If you choose Enter, you will listen to English, and if you select Yaikuri, then you will be able to listen to the presentations in Quechua. We would like to reiterate our recognition to our strategic allies, AGAP, the AgriChile, Amautas Mineros, National Water Authority, Chamber of Commerce Peru Australia, Chamber of Commerce Peru South Africa, CITE Papa, Co-Foundation, Yauti Geological Mining and Geological Institute in Quebec, Crecer Institute, NGOs, Futuro Sostenible, Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation, and WIMCO Peru, and Geographical Society of Lima. Thank you all. Now we're going to begin the fourth block called Territorial Executive Units and Efficiency in Public Investment. Today we have as the leader of this block, Mr. Juan Manuel Benitez. He's an economist from Universidad del Pacífico and the Catholic University of Chile, expert in investment topics, public and private sector, 25 years of experience as public official and consultant to governments, international organizations, cooperation agencies, cooperator of IEDEP and the Chamber of Commerce. He is the president of Instituto Crecer. It is an honor for us to have him to be the leader of such an important block like this. Welcome, Mr. Juan Manuel Benitez. Good afternoon. Thank you for your introduction. Yes, we are in the crucial section of the event, the second agromining conference. This, in my opinion, is where we have to identify specific concrete actions. Many things have been proposed during these days of exchanging ideas, but now we have speakers and panel members with vast experience in the public sector, not only from Peru, but only from abroad. So they will help us to we could implement to change the speed. This country needs more execution, more efficiency in investment, in public investment especially, but not only efficient, but we should connect with the big social demand that we have in the country that always puts us in these discussions of the economic model that we should follow, or maybe we should concentrate on how we generate a basic infrastructure, quality services to allow citizens for a better living and to generate social peace. I think that is fundamental. Without further ado, I'm going to tell you about the rules of the game. We have 25 minutes for each speaker, and then we will have the panel members who will have 15 minutes each. So kindly stick to the time because we still have some other things scheduled. So I kindly ask you to stick on time. I will let you know in advance so you can expedite your presentations. We will start with Raul Molina. He is an architect with a master from the University of Barcelona, and he has a diploma from CEPAL, and he was a vice minister of territorial governance of the Minister Council. He was advisor at the Culture ministry, and he was also the secretary of the PCM and an advisor before, former advisor of the former Council of Decentralization. And he is also professor in several universities of the country. Raul, you have the floor now. Welcome. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for the invitation. This topic of how to strengthen the implementation in all the executive units all over the country, it's a key topic. We are usually evaluating the state on its capacity of digest public resources, of public investment, but we do not take into account that that category of state is formed by more than 2,000 entities, and some of them are very, very small entities with little institutional capacity, and in some cases, they are stuck of canon resources for public investment that they have to process with exactly the same rules that a ministry has to process them. The ministry can have access to a better trained staff. So I was the vice minister during more than 2 years, and I have faced to that problem every day because in addition to social conflicts, there were public projects that were not offered to the population in rural areas that lack services and public infrastructure. And they were promised to them decades ago, and they are never introduced. And sometimes resources are allocated, they start the execution, and it is stopped. I always use the example in one of the communities in the jungle that recently was on the news, where there is a station one of Petro Peru in Saramorilla. A long time ago, they contracted a sanitation project with contractors like the ones you can find in those areas, companies with a short history, rather reliable, that they vanish at some point. And this is executed under very difficult conditions. To transport the personnel for construction and the equipment is not easy. The work was stopped, and the wells of drainage are opened but not completed for several months and months and months. And every time it rains, they become swimming. Not do anything. We prefer that our execution rules continue being the same, although they are not adapted for those areas. They are thought thinking about Lima and large cities, something that I also think it is fundamental for the topic about execution of territorial investments. That's the name of the session related to executive units, is that the state, not only the Peruvian state, but states in general, they are afraid to face multi-sectoral challenges. Increasingly, the public requests we have seen that they cannot be met only from one specialized entity, early child development, formalization of small enterprises, uh, fostering innovation, decentralization, and dozens of other topics of public policy need a multidimensional approach and therefore the participation of several specialists. However, in the Peruvian state, we do not have anybody who can take the ownership of multisectoral. If we were to ask a colleague from the Ministry of Economy and Finances, well, that is why budget programs are for the original ones, the ones that were multisectoral. Now we have regulated again the famous the results-oriented budget programs. We have one that has been completed, and the other is in the process of formulating. But the way to formulate them on the vertical way and closed way, the product is so burdensome, so it cannot be a useful tool. We need to find a different way to approach the multi-sectoral approach. Another common response is, well, the PCM, the Prime Minister Council, has to take care of that. In other countries, there are other ways to approach multi-sectoral approaches. And they can be a holder of one multi-sectoral program and allocate the money according to the goals that need to be met in the program. The Ecuadorian option of coordination and a specialized ministry for investment, or any name you may think of, but we need to find one. The mechanisms that we have used so far do not allow us to solve that problem. And it is even worse when we went to the territory. Territory, by definition, it's the container where all the dimensions of development meet. And to change the life to a territory, like the one is on the background of Juan Manuel, rural areas like many of our territories, but also the urban territories that are very diverse, we need to find a way for all the vectors of public policy that converge on a territory could be articulated. And who can own that articulation? PCM cannot be everywhere. In theory, it is the regional government. When the scale is higher than a municipality, it is the provincial, districtal government who is more than one community. But unfortunately, in our country, we have not given those governments neither the power or nor the capacities to meet the role to articulate the interventions in their territories. The first one that enters is the national government because it interrupts and decides the interventions on their own account without respecting the owner of the house. That's the territorial government. You will say, well, there are many cases where they lack capacity, but we have 20 years of decentralization and we haven't made an effort to build those capacities. So it is easy when it is a public policy and the scope is a department, a province, or a district, because we have the state well organized for that. But what happens if the scope of that public policy is a basin or an economic corridor, is the road corridor or the mining corridor in the south, or it is the petroleum area of Loreto, or maybe it is the famous south of Ayacucho that has been on the media for a long time. We have three provinces involved, but it is smaller than the department of Ayacucho, and they are very far away from the capital of Ayacucho, so the regional government is not responsible. What is the institutional way of governance that we have for those territories? I can continue telling you about it. Brian, we do not have answers for Brian because that covers 4 departments, more than 20 municipalities. Who is the owner of Brian to articulate and to coordinate the actions that one day will allow us to talk about Brian as a developing area and not a problematic area? Well, but the state is not organized yet, but the state has to adjust to the society. We cannot ask society to adjust to the state. The state has to look for governance ways to meet the challenges and the requests from the society. When I was a vice minister, we started a plan to close the gaps in the west of Loreto, half of the districts that are related to oil activities. This gap closing was done with territorial approach, discussed with all the units. We held more than 30 workshops, not in Iquitos, in the communities. There were teams traveling by river in order to group people in 30 workshops with indigenous women, with indigenous youth that were studying in Iquitos. We had endless meetings with municipalities, designing a plan with a 6-year horizon. that close the basic gaps that this nation owes to our fellow citizens in the lower jungle. That plan was signed by all the minister council except the person that was the minister of economy and finances, because she said that the ministry does not approve plans. Development strategy in a territory by solving all the inhabitants the management of their basic needs. The Ministry of Economy and Finances would have lost part of the power if they accepted that. I understand that the reasons were for we governments that adapt to the needs of people. In that area, we have 200,000 Peruvians living there, and they deserve that we meet their needs. That plan had a governance design because we knew we didn't have an executive instrument. Community in the development groups below the district. The district there are very big, some conglomerate of communities, and for several reasons, we tried to make some community articulation. This was thought in agreement with an international cooperation agency to help organize the soft aspect of that governance. The other proposal was a regional coordination committee in charge of the regional government, where the regional government came down and the districts went up to coordinate among all of them, and a monitoring unit of the results at the Prime Minister office to make sure that the national government was doing its task. It is a very complex governance design, no doubt, but we didn't have for that. In Europe, it would be the case, is to create an agency for development. It is an organization which is temporary that is created to meet a contract of execution of resources with a specific purpose within the framework of a policy of territorial development. Colombians are doing similar things with their municipalities and departments. We have a project of development agencies at the PCM with the support of the European Union. Unfortunately, those so-called development agencies from the PCM cannot reach a space of coordination and consensus. They cannot move to execution because we do not have the legal means that allow the public-private execution in a given space and in a given time. We do have the laws for special projects of public investment, which was enacted in 2020 by the Ministry of Economy, but that legislation is only for investment, and we all know that territorial development means different types of interventions which are not investments of capital, and it's only for public investment. And territorial development means the intervention from the public sector and the private sector. If at some time we can generate an organizational way that will enable, for example, in the mining corridor in the south, all the municipalities in that territory that they have a lot of money because of the canon, the regional government of Cusco, they already have a lot of money by canon, and the Apurímac will have also by mining activities. If they all put together all the money for an articulated strategy for the development in that territory, these areas wouldn't have this problem. They would become sources of wealth, possibilities for the people, but we need an organizational way, not a public one, because otherwise the municipal communities are one way of association, but they have to follow public agendas with no incentive limitations than the municipalities. However, a public-private agency could do it with a private labor regime for the staff working there on temporary basis while the contract lasts. Once it is finished, everybody leaves. I have worked in projects all my life, and I never felt I have a long-lasting job. The project begins and I leave when it finishes. That is the logic of the agencies. I'm not inventing anything. In Spain, there are agencies. In Germany also, in France, In France, they work with the board by actions. The investment banks and the agencies for retirement that have a lot of money, they purchase the shares from the development agencies. And many development agencies that started making plans for development for a region, they stayed in the market because they were so efficient that they already have signed several contracts, but they are public and private. The municipalities are the co-owners, but the funds of retirement and investment banks are also co-owners. I know it is a sophisticated idea, very bold idea, but let's work on that direction because otherwise the the Chantilly portfolio of public investment could be left out, but the rest of public investment that will change the life of Peruvians in rural areas, it is not going to go through the PMO because it is not attractive for that mechanism. But we could have an agency for development for brine, for the mining corridor, for the south of Ayacucho, small and medium size. They only work while you have the contract. And at the end, everybody goes home. I think that that's the way to go. It is a difficult path. It is a path that needs to open the minds, but especially it is a path that, in the logic of public policy, is not asking the situation to adapt to the limitations of the state. The request is to ask the state what society needs from the state. This state, Peruvian state that we have, has not been able to do in 200 years of republic. We have a lot of rules, uh, implying that with that we were ordering the state. But we are, we are really incapable to execute. We need to facilitate the execution based on what people need. And people need multi-sectorial, territorial, and multiple actors. This is what our territories need. Otherwise, if we do not respond that, let's not complain that the social unrest continues growing. Thank you very much. Well, this gives us space. I will comment at the end because I see Magali is ready to start.
I don't know whether Luis is with us. Okay. So now I will continue with Magali Silva. She's a Peruvian economist. Sorry, here I am. Oh, Luis. Sorry, I apologize. So, Luis Taiz was president of the Decentralization Institute. He was also Secretary Official of Peru Posible. We would like to hear Luis. Luis Taiz, you have 25 minutes. Good afternoon. Thank you for the brief introduction. I just want to reflect on some specific issues that are probably important to reflect upon. We need to think on why the state spends money on, because we want to develop our country and we need to have a national plan on development that we do not have for so many years within territorial management. How can a specific region, municipality, province, how can they define what it's good? But for their region, if there's no baseline, a general view for development, Peru is a unit. We are not 24 small pieces of land. We are a country. And this specific unit has to be coherent in what we do and what we expect and what we spend. So I think that will be the first step when we heard, yes, government spends so many resources on a lot of other things. And I agree. agree, but nobody is telling this is the path to follow. Let's move towards this direction. In order to do so, look on how we can make this feasible. There's no dialogue in between the three different levels of government to create this unity, a common vision for development. So this is probably one of the first things. Once you have it, you have goals, projects, budgets, all these different things that are probably important to develop. Another important issue is that projects. I may not be updated to what is happening recently within decentralization, especially on legislation on this matter, but we had a participatory budget. This participatory budget translated into something that was quite complex to understand. Why? Because participatory budget for a region, or what we used to call department, they had to agree. The same at the province, districts had to agree. That go through an election. It's a candidate for my region. I have a view for development, but I cannot just simply emphasize that because all want a piece of cake. And there's no decree that simply highlights regional cannot spend on specific items that are not part of their regions or so forth, and especially municipalities were not necessarily recognizing the national geography. And you get things worse whenever there were elections. So they were fighting against each other, each of the candidates of who could do that. Re-election no longer exists. Therefore, competition has been reduced. But now, what we should be doing is trying to build what Raul mentioned in the I was trying to connect myself, so I wasn't able to hear all of his dissertation. But basically, to get together, reprogramming of resources, not only between districts, but also between the provinces, regions, and nationwide. We need to bring resources together so that those are big enough so that we can actually make big changes. If the country says, for instance, this plan 100% water availability or sewage, how do I do this? This is all of us making this effort, or the government, or just the pieces. So basically, there are things that have to be solved first in order to uh, allocate the expenses and resources whenever it's needed. And the very important things. Who is the one working on projects at the district level? People with just few know-how, or they do not have enough resources to hire a technical expert. We have a specific salary for ministers, for the regions and municipalities. It should be one national salary for all these different authorities. So whenever somebody from Cañete hires a project specialist, they will get paid the same as they will be paid by the Ministry of Agriculture. Equal job, equal pay. That will probably attract people that may not necessarily go to the other regions because salaries are low. Managerial positions at municipalities and regional governments should not just simply change sporadically whenever the governor is changed, when the mayor is changed. I think that Servir should have specific managers for municipalities. These are public servants that are not just simply available of to the current government, but basically they work for the region, for the district, for the country, and not necessarily to that person in power at that specific time. That's probably another reform to think of and apply. And we also have the budget approval. MEF is this huge giant. They do not have enough staff nor capacity because they don't know the region and territories. So they will give the resources at the very end of the month. No, it is just like whenever uh, I do not use that, it has to go back. Where in October, November, ministers that had not spent money, they moved money to the regional governments or mayors. So those resources are the regional governments got the money at the very last minute and they cannot manage that. Then they have big issues because they are not able to handle those late come results. And that shouldn't be hard for a region or the decentralized government to spend. I think there are lots of different elements that should come with the whole procurement processes, with the controllerships work, so that there's no corruption. Corruption is at all different levels. The 20 million thousand dollars, the toilet of the palace, up to the very small localities. Definitely, this have to be something that promotes activities. If we have a general vision, a common vision for the development of the country, setting up specific action priorities, and these actions are shared and translated into a specific territorial management strategy. Maybe in some cases it could be only done by the regional governments or the municipalities, and national governments from now on should start spending is hold together with the centralized governments that will have a better coordination Of course, always with the support of the controllership so that you can oversight all the different components so that everything comes without so many hindrances and corruption. Of course, there's no incentive for PPPs, which I heard previously. I think and Raul also mentioned that we used to have some small sort of agencies like Pro Inversión in some regional governments. And what happened? They're just few PPPs, regional government, because there's no incentive to attract investments towards the regions for those of parties interested in PPPs. And that's something that we should definitely need in mind. But who is going to build up this common vision, the territorial development vision? Who is in charge? It is not the Ministry of Economy and Finance, neither each of the ministries. I believe that we should have to work on the creation and Ministry of Territorial Development that won't cost money because you will use the same resources. This ministry should bring together the plan, the Vice Ministry of Economy, Pro Inversión, the Secretariat, or how do you call this? The Territorial Vice, I can't remember the name, but you will have this specialized unit that will work on the creation of this common vision and see how this actually translated into real investment through the different resources and budgets coming from the three different levels or common budget where private sector could also participate in the characteristics of the projects. I think that decentralization may need a rethink. The decentralization bill, which was approved with full majority, I recall they prepared a program, but when they prepared that with the chalk of Alan Garcia, faculty resources, projects were presented, but there was no control or surveillance so that those in charge of those project resources have that specific capacity to do so. We built a system to get them be part of an awarding. It is not just simply say yes, but you need to bring this to the citizens. And I believe that this should be taken into account. I remember when we were in the CND, I recall that we were talking on a report, a monthly regional governments and municipalities work so that they could be a way of oversighting, like a ranking of universities or schools to, again, create this healthy competition. But we need to also give priorities. No water or sewage, or schools, or medical centers, health centers. These very basic services, garbage collection. Those have to be priority nowadays so that we have a social network that will give us the chance to get up to another level. Only those need internet for sure, environmental safety, of course. But if we get into other projects which are trapping in and do not necessarily solve the very basic needs, I think that's also nonsense. So I believe that this new ministry could probably create this sort of guidelines. And for sure, it will also require a new political agreement that I do not foresee for this Congress or nor the past Congress. But we are all talking about decentralization, but nobody's actually doing anything about it. It is like sometimes we say we love our mother when we never visited them. So thank you. That will be it. We will move on to Magali. Magali Silva.
Magalisi is an economist from the University of Pacifico with broad experience in public management, Minister of Foreign Trade and Tourism 2013-2016. At present, she works at the Central Bank of Reserve. Magali, the floor is yours. Can you hear me well? Thank you, Juan Manuel. As I was saying, this is going to be a different view to see what we do to confront this delay as a state we have caused. We start from very specific facts that Peru is a huge country where we could have 10 European countries, the two Koreas, part of Japan in our territory, and maybe even the Arab countries, a dozen of them would fit in our territory. And for many people that we compare with China, we are like 15% of the whole territory of China, thanks to the size of country that we have. And this is the country, it's very difficult, it has a complicated geography, which makes us, because we have this huge cordillera, the mountain range that divides the country between the Amazon region and the coast, where we can see that agriculture and mining need to go together. Agriculture and mining are here to achieve the development. But in this complicated and extensive country, there are many social issues that we inherited from the conqueror's time. And these goals, these gaps have not been, we have not been able to disappear. And with this growth focused only in some economic activities and in some cities and regions of the country, have deepened these social cracks that we have. We have a technological delay that we live day to day and of basic infrastructure. Lucho mentioned the lack of access to internet that are in many regions of the country. When you travel, I just came back from Amazonas, and in Bagua, for instance, if you leave the downtown area, there is no more internet. And this is only 2,000 meters above sea level. So just to reflect what Lucho and Raul have commented, we have these territories where there is a community that we have never seen. So the communities uh, are represented by authorities. Many times we think we are not going to rethink the decentralization, but we need to think why in the elections for mayor or regional elections there is not the same representativity like in the national elections, where the two candidates, the final candidates with highest vote, run for the election. When you look at regional elections, or there are regional governors that really have a very low representativity. So we go to the regions and to the communities, and we have the instructions of authorities that exercise the power without being prepared for that. And they don't even have many times when they are regional authorities. They were born in the region, they studied in Lima or abroad, and they go back with ideas that do not belong to the territorial development. And finally, we have the corporations. It doesn't matter if they are large or small, formal or informal, if they are only entrepreneurs, but somehow they belong to a sector for production and the generation of wealth. This is the environment in this country. So we have to see how, what we do to fix this situation, like the situation that we have at present in our country. How can we show the progress that should stay in the units? You have already mentioned, like Raul, we need to manage the territories. All the problems of governance, Raul told us the experience of his work that was very intensive to have a managed territory that finally was not approved. This management of the territories needs to be articulated, in my opinion, in order to change the results that we have had so far through projects that can be managed by enterprises. I am talking about a business organization, an institution that has the focus to have tangible and concrete results. And we can see this has to be done. We cannot wait for the next elections. We cannot continue waiting because the pandemics showed us that we need to overcome the indicators of poverty. So it is necessary to think on a formula. We are not inventing the wheel, and we have to see the past, to look at the past. Why was there a change for the new law of the canon? So the mining projects and this call from Agromin has put together all the sectors, the communities and the investors. In the mining company, they arrive to a territory, they use the resources, well, and they work with the funding provided by national or international investors. So it is necessary that the companies rethink the work that they have been doing from the design of the projects, the calculation of the internal return rates, to add the concept of what has to be an eco-friendly exploitation, not only friendly with the environment, but it has to be social eco-friendly. We're speaking of the case of transportation of minerals. The mining companies have to be aware of the risks that this transportation of minerals imply in terms of production, chemical substances that could be hazardous, that could affect the citizens. So the mines have to think that when they are using the technology, they could build pipes for the transportation of minerals. In that different concept that the mining company should have, they also have to think in how they articulate or how they relate with the communities. So in this case, the projects are not only related to infrastructure, but also elements that are productive. For example, the system of productive land, they would start small businesses to finance the communities through trade and establish the relationships, productive and commercial relations, in order to find the supply and the demand and to generate this additional income, the employment generation, for instance. If you measure the impact of a mining project in the community, you should not forget the network of suppliers, the need to build schools, technical schools, the need to build the roads. All of that takes to the integration and to look for a total impact view of the mining project, not only in the construction of infrastructure, but also everything related to maintenance. It is not only to build an infrastructure, but also to work in the maintenance. Through this commitment in the infrastructure, what we do is generate employment. We are generating local employment that is going to have an impact. So, what should be the main reason of these operations or management of the project? It has to be to improve the life quality of the communities. It is very sad when we travel around our very huge territory and we see areas that make us think we're in a different century. We have to look at the human capital. Young people have to feel that this year, for example, that they have lost because of the pandemic, they have to feel connected to training. They have to see somehow that it can be done. Today, there are many opportunities with the technologies, tools, but that has to be added to a job that will give me some earnings that could be originated by the mining project. All of that, well, goes back to something that Juan Manuel mentioned at the beginning. I don't think that any of us is not looking for social peace. And the authorities need to understand that the mission is to facilitate the flourishing of businesses because the companies, beyond they have the problems of permits, changes of authorities, the companies have to focus on collect their productivity, and their productivity cannot take out the managers or employers of the company from the center of the businesses, but they need to be more competitive to sell or to sell the products at a better price. When the companies achieve that capacity to think in improving the low systems of productivity, This is going to improve the whole territory. We can see the benefits, for example, when, when they deliver new products to the community, how people in the company, the suppliers, all the network improves. We have to insist in the adoption of state-of-the-art technologies with international cooperation. Countries that today, the chambers of commerce that today are part of Agromin, they can be partners of this new approach. The generation of networks is very important. I am sure that Agromin is going to give this second added value to the gathering of so many international and national speakers. We are talking about cooperation and collaboration through funds, and obviously, what we need to do is avoid the overvaluation. We should be convinced that 2 out of $3 invested in the economy come from the private sector. The employment sources, informal, formal job, 4.5 million jobs generated by the private sector and 1.5 jobs created by the public sector. So we need to give the conditions for the businesses to understand the mission of development and looking at the rule for project. First, the project should be talked with the communities. It could not be somebody that comes from outside and will say, here we are going to build a soccer stadium for the community to reach a high level soccer players. But we need to identify the specific needs in the communities. I was saying that, well, I have visited several areas around Amazonas, visiting different towns, the roads, the access, the Wi-Fi issue, and something that's very important is the human capital. Human capital is not prepared in Amazonas, for instance, to grow according to the needs for the boom of tourism, for instance. So it's important to identify the specific needs in each one, in each region, in each community. And it was also mentioned that it is important to prioritize the activities. We cannot overnight invest in everything, but we should know uh, about the implementation of projects and complete the projects. In Amazonas, for example, in Chachapayos, they do not have a department of cardiology in the hospital that was recently opened. So if a problem goes there with health issues, maybe a heart attack, that person has to travel by road to Chachapoya. The hospital doesn't have enough beds. So the needs are huge in those areas. So the idea is to prioritize. In Amazonas, they told me that one solution is about the service of the Air Force in helicopter. Obviously, the places are too small. So if they have this helicopter system, they can transfer the patients in an efficient way. And that is provided by technology, because with technology, we can measure the time, we can rationalize the use of resources, and we need to have goals that can be achieved in time. Listening to Lucho about the idea of creating the Ministry of Development, and that makes a lot of sense what he said, because many times the Ministry of Economy and Finances has like two heads. One is the good cap and the bad cap, the one in charge of resources. In most countries, there is the Ministry of Finances, and the Ministry of Economy is more related to ministries working in development and how to push that development through production. And production takes place by improving the conditions for the creation of wealth. And obviously, we need all of us, all the stakeholders, we have to be engaged, including the public sector, for the investment purposes. It has happened to us in recent times that it would seem that we are staying away from the others and we have forgotten to look at the Peruvians, men and women who live in our territories. Why the governments, the mayors, the ministries forget about this, that it is so important. You have to start with a project, and the project has to provide solutions to a problem or to a need. That problem that starts in the territory, well, we should start by the regions that have poverty rates that are very high. We're talking about the South Corridor and Cajamarca. And what is the impact, the commercial impact, for instance, that if we are using the mechanism of works for taxes or the PPPs, uh, in order to build the system for the schools in the Amazonas region, I had to face these problems on a daily basis. The project starts and it came from the year 2000, more than 20 years on a file, and progress was not made because obviously there was a disagreement everywhere. Finally, the project was approved through a public and private partnership to solve a specific problem in a territory that was to solution the transfer of people. The tourism has an impact in the community. They have the if they have the capacity to generate facilities around to generate quality employment. There is a potential impact. That potential impact is lived in society, either negative or positive, but also there is an impact on the environment. And that is linked to the capacity of sustainability of the project. This project in the basin aimed at to delivering the constructor of the system, the concession of the visit to Cuelap, the tourism site, for 5 years, with which the recovery of the investment was going to be viable. The thing is, who was going to invest there? It is very important to us who. We looked at the best international suppliers. This is the only system of telecabins in Peru for air transportation cabins. So, therefore, in the region, at the level Colombia, we looked at Ecuador and the suppliers of the best machinery. A French company built that system of telecabins and offered a public and private consortium. In the suppliers chain, it's very important to see the impact caused in the generation of employment. In the contract, we indicated it has to be minimum 85% of local workers. There was very specialized labor, like engineers. There were 1,000 trips in helicopter to take all the material for installing the telecabins. But there had to be one person in charge, a coordinator, somebody who would respond on the delays. And that is the next link in the chain. Similarly, like in the Pan American Games, we need to have an activity plan and contingency plan because the worst enemy is the time. And in our case, the climate changes usually expand, and in rainfall season, we cannot offer the service. Since it was launched, the suppliers look for international funding, and that forced us to have more transparency in the construction of the work. And finally, a comprehensive analysis of everything implied in the service. Finally, to close with this idea and to be respectful with time, my proposal would be how can we among ourselves propose a truce to stop the crossfire actions where everybody is blaming everybody. I think in November and December, starting November 27, we should start getting together. And I think we can understand that everyone of us is here to improve the conditions of life of the communities. We are talking about the same community, and a joint work means to look at the final objective, but also we have to measure that in time. But while we do not do anything and we continue discussing and we continue using the word to demand, we are going to lose in this emotionally. And the ones that are suffering the most are the children. The anemia continues increasing. This learning will make us, all of us, get together because how I see Peru should be in the big leagues. In Peru, we have everything to be successful. Many conferences have happened, and I think this is like a window to, well, Rodrigo has given us some ideas that I am sure they are going to help us find this path to untangle this and to start building all together this country. That, but we need to agree and to participate and to move from ideas to action. I think this is an important possibility provided by Agromin, and also to congratulate the organizers of the event and also to Juan Manuel. You're always optimistic and positive.
Una de las ideas básicas para que puedan ellos iniciar también su locución.
So they can start with their Peru is diverse with a very complex geography. We would love to be smaller in order to probably organize much better. Maybe Rodrigo will explain us more on his context in Uruguay, but it is maybe a system that have to be rethought in the way that we may necessarily need a more complex reform. But again, the need of urgency also shows that what to do until we can launch a reform. We have social unrest, we have different problems all over the place, and the formula may not be applicable. The formulas are actually been working, especially lots of issues related to oversight of controllership that we are somehow stuck. And that's related to corruption issues for sure. We're missing that country vision, like Luis mentioned. There's no roadmap, we improved, but maybe it's not enough. Lack of accompanying efforts. Math is not enough. It's not actually solving the problem. This is huge turnover of staff at the regional and local government. So this whole learning curve, there's no public training as such. There's no public servants. Then we need to have this multi-sectorial, multi-stakeholder approach. Each minister, regional governments, local governments with different agendas, no dialogue in between the others. It is very well disorganized, and that does not help to move forward. What could be the solutions? Let's hear Rodrigo, but Raul was talking on an agency for development or tools like works for taxes. Luis talked about the Ministry of Development that could be probably take part of the efforts of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, maybe think on uh, public works minister or ministries, as the case of Chile. Raúl, this is not just looking at this executing units approach, but there's more than simply working on public procurement in order to get development. Definitely, we need to go through the examples that he mentioned of Europa's legal framework, which is also something that Raul mentioned. How we help the Congress, we need to probably set the ball next to the goal, maybe, or just have a look at PPPs. It probably promote private investment. We try with the PMO after the Pan American Games and with reconstruction, with changes they're trying to do that. Maybe we should reflect on what they are doing. And Magali, she highlighted that it is not just something that comes from the top. It should be a involvement, participation, engagement, not only on the planning. Planning is just at the very abstractive level, but that they actually feel like they're part of the activity and the whole accountability process. They have the future in their hands. I remember, if you want me to tell you the truth and the reality, the response is that we need to create, to build upon the baseline that they are the ones creating their own future. They are the ones liable of that future, and just forget about these ideological approaches because there are, of course, unsatisfied needs to cover. I totally agree, even though I'm an ex-MEF member. MEF is not actually collaborating and supporting territorial development, and we should also think on how to change their role in order to promote through budget, through investment projects. It could lead to a change in the vision of development, especially quality of life of Peruvians. We have Rodrigo Velasco, civil engineer. Sector program assessment, and he's now been working in Paraguay. He will be sharing with us his expertise. Rodrigo, please, you have the floor now. 15 minutes for you. Thank you for the invitation. Magali actually set the goal pretty high with her presentation. Thank you. I hope that I do not disappoint you all. Anyway, uh, when she referred to Uruguay, where I live now, Uruguay is a, we can hear lots of territorial issues that Raúl Molina also mentioned. It also have to do with the size of the country, but also with it is a, we have departments or regions, but local governments are clearly set, determined, defined in the country legislation. I've been working for many years in Mexico. It's a federal state, so different from north to south. It is way more complex, of course, to manage territories and to set the duties to each of these different governments. I recall when those days when I was assessing programs, I held meetings with the local office in the specific territory, let's say Jalisco, but the national government representative was in the local government office for agriculture. And I saw a duplication of duties, and I was shocked by that. You definitely need to avoid that duplication of duties. In Uruguay, a smaller country, you do not see this type of duplication of positions or duties. This does not mean that I can say Peru, that is a big country, you should do things like these. Each country should lead and follow their own path. But I would like to talk about efficiency on investment, which is one of the topics of this session. For more than 20 years, I think that in order to impact on well-being, not only public investment quantity is needed, but also the quality of that investment. Magali shared the return rate, not this, but not the economic, but the social rate. How you assess projects, how you assess the impact of those projects in the country and in Latin America and the countries I've visited, you see the same example. You have lots of investments that are having very expensive use of resources, but that do not necessarily provide enough focus on development, territorial development, or social benefits. We have seen huge airports or roads or highways over dimension and for the flow of cars that they serve. When we focus on the quality, things change. I've heard from instances from Magali, health center, hospitals, depending on the size and dimensions. of the buildings. You cannot have all specialties everywhere. When we talk about health, it is hard. One is heartless, but if we build such a huge facility but cannot actually provide services of all different specialties in one unique place, will probably be in detriment of other locations in other facilities. But you can say, I have not all specialties, but I may probably invest in having helicopters, for instance. Not as bad as a tool that may help me to have a, this is a physical investment that could be more appropriate to the community. Depending on the size of the population, whenever there's a special need, you have that means. You have a helicopter or a way to have a landing place. So you're providing somehow this service, not identical, but at least probably in a more efficient way in a long term. That's something that we should probably consider. Apologies that I come back to the topic of Agromin. When I received the invitation, I was wondering, agriculture and mining mining, first of all. So from a foreigner, I was like, wow, but these are sectors that are competing against each other. The territory for land, for water. While carrying out the research, I saw the great importance of mining in Peru and how you've learned that these two activities should together and coexist. What to do so that those investors, when they calculate their internal return rates, include externalities of those activities. And I'm not just simply referring to the fact of the pollution of companies, agriculture as well, certain types of intensive agriculture with the usage of agrochemicals also pollute water. So it's not just saying one or the other, but thinking that all externalities have to be covered. They have to make investors to include these externalities into their decision-making processes. For instance, how do we make them change their mind instead of using trucks, use pipelines? Depending on the volume, you have to actually estimate whether a pipeline will be much better than trucks. What will happen if you use more expensive truck, depending on distance, transportation means, and then you have regulation. You need to ease private investment, that there should be correct incentives so that they use technology available to minimize third-party risks, not only at the environmental level, but also at a social level. And this is something that it is important to say. I'm looking at my notes. Raúl Molina said that governments are slow. He said that the countries governments are slow in their own decision-making processes, and he talked about a specific case of a project. And my point is that this may probably create some conflict on these other interests related to the controllership that Juan Manuel mentioned. That governments, all stakeholders, these sort of accountability entities such as the controllership and other different entities. So this is a constant permanent tension and there's no specific solution to it. So this normally could be placed for a specific focus on public, funded by the public sector. And this could not be used to avoid control or to avoid avoid controllership and avoid transparency. Basically, the recognition that the speed of governments to change on other side. A lawyer told me once the idea of the file. A file in the public sector is so important, and it is just something that comes from Napoleon times. It has to do with the law. In Napoleonic in Spanish law, and therefore it comes to the territories. And we are still in the 21st century. We are holding meetings online. We have all the different technology, but in Uruguay, in the public sector, you are still bringing together paper, which is absurd, which is really old-fashioned that should disappear. But Luisa is also mentioned participatory budget. I don't know how they will apply in Uruguay, but I think here we refer to very local procedures at Montevideo, the city of Montevideo, the large Montevideo area, works with this participatory budget. And I believe that that's a good thing to include people in small projects, but big projects should not be decided with majority of votes, nor from the population or the ministries or the parliament vote. There are tools and technical methodologies to be applied in order to products. The methodology for project assessment, and there are also methodologies to count with the environmental impacts as well. So methodologies are there to be applied. Complex, expensive, qualified stuff is needed. Yes, not all governments at the local level have them. I'm not stating that these have to be done for all investments or for small investments at the local level, but to probably come back to the idea of investment that you will be considering of large amounts of money, and you say, where are we going to get a professional that works with a good project management? You're talking about a huge investment. 1% of, if we do not have a proper planning, those 30 million could be a loss for a country instead of becoming a benefit. Thus, these savings, in order to research and assess a project, there are no resources, but you have resources for executing. That's nonsense. That doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Just because of the hurry on execution. Oh, it is October. I think Ty said that they need to execute now because you're just simply spending, no matter planning or investing correctly. These are probably things that you can see in all countries. The cycle of expenses and expenditures to execute in a specific period of time, where investment sometimes required a larger maturity deadline that it probably exceed more than a year. So we should be focusing on the investment, and we should allocate resources apart from what we should do in order to invest. Probably focus on quality, not only on public procurement, which is maybe simpler, but what type of regulation so that private investment can also be of quality for the country and not only for the investors. Thank you for the invitation. That will be. Thank you, Rodrigo. Now I'll give the floor to Cecilia Flores, who's a corporate lawyer with more than 30 years of managing public and private media departments, and she's CEO of Cremates and Calvo Sotelo lawyer firm, and CEO at Women CEO, which promotes leadership of women in several associations. She's another women in Spain and good practices and human rights in Peru. Cecilia, a pleasure to see you. Sorry.
Muchas gracias, Juan Manuel.
Por favor.
Muchas gracias, Juan Manuel. Mi saludo cordial a todos.
Thank you, Juan Manuel, and greetings to all speakers. I'm honored to be part of this section. I believe that we are thinking and discussing on so many important topics for our country. We all wonder how our executing units could be efficient for private and public investment alike. I think that we may probably think on the importance of the perspective from, I used to work in the hydrocarbon office, and my public experience and private experience have provided me this point of view, sometimes painful point of view, and social conflicts and social expectations in relation to investments. Of course, I share ideas, thoughts that were shared. It's not only what was already shared, it's even way more. I remember that met an expert, very well known expert on community engagement. He said to me, any business in the rural area, especially from extractive industry, has everything to lose because, of course, a company similar to it has already come to this area and have not accomplished what they promised. So there's always either public or private entities, there's always these uh, different needs to be covered, commitments that were not made. And I wonder what Vista is asked on why governments spend in order to achieve development. But yes, we need a vision. We should start from that. That should be the starting point. Our experience would lead us to this specific solution, isn't it? We need to understand priorities, local needs, especially when projects are located in rural areas. I would probably like to share a positive view. Even though the challenging scenario, we need to finally accept from the government and private sector perspective that we need to place human beings at the center. All efforts want to look for the well-being of all. Oh, that should be the main goal. But Rodrigo says that in Latin America, growth and social well-being are not necessarily easy to see. Yeah, lots of investment, but less social impact. And that's true. We have so many social conflicts with different resolutions to be solved, items to be accomplished, and at the very end, the debt, that social debt, is translated to the other government because of the less efficiency of the government in a specific area. So where to start with? How do we start getting out of this problem to work on a development agenda? The government have to focus on the real needs and priorities of the population. And we also need to know the role of each of the different agents. I work on human rights because I believe it is key and very basic to look at the human beings, the citizens, the different stakeholder representatives, the Local citizens here pay attention instead of imposing or preaching. Try to learn what they want to build, and that's probably one of the main experiences that I had when I was working at the public sector. Regional agendas are so different from Lima. There's no common goal. There's we are all growing in such a disconnected way. Agendas and municipal and district levels governments are also so different. And you come from Lima and you want to promote a specific project and you say this is the formula of development, but there are so many different views and approaches. So again, let's go back to the person, to all the different operators and stakeholders, and we tend to impose. We say, yeah, mining activities bring development. Yes, but where's the link, the relationship with the community? If that connection is not also being said by the government so that the different parties can get together and understand each other, of course, what will happen is that the communities will go to the businesses and ask for those social needs to them because they are the closest in their circle of connections. And that's not their role, that's the role of the government. International law has been responding to all these different positive or negative impacts, responsibilities, social unsatisfied needs. uh, And you have, for instance, the guidelines on business and human rights that ask for the importance of the respect of human rights. We need to ask the state to respect people. If they do so, maybe public policies will have better results. But in a state like ours, we have so many differences in between formality and reality. They form the act, the paper, the law, the act on paper. As Luis said, it's not motivating. It is just a paper that is not practical. It's not real life. The government does not actually want to adapt to the real needs of the population. And the reason of existence of the state is actually to provide that organization, to provide and cover that need. We need to rethink, as Magali said, not only public investment projects, but the role of the state as well. We need to include different approaches. I emphasize the recent approval after a 2-year process with more than 130 business, academia, international agencies, space of discussion to make this culture of respecting human rights. And looking at all the different accesses that we've been discussing, the national plan does play an important role within the state. How to build a culture of respect, respect promoted by the state There are specific indicators we expect this plan to be fulfilled. Peru has joined as part of their involvement to include this as part of the national public policy framework. We're, uh, this specific regulation subject to a number of consensus with unions, with civil society organizations, indigenous people, the whole state, decentralized governments. They all agree on looking at that specific right. And when we talk about respecting of rights, we're talking about health, education, life, investment, housing. All this is part of the social contract. I won't state a specific value or number to this, but lots of us will feel that these are not necessarily accomplished 100%. And it is not only a challenge for the state, who has the duty to protect human rights and provide us the conditions to exercise those rights, but also companies, as Magali said. Of course, companies can provide positive, but also negative impact. So let's talk about rights within organizations and companies too. Mining companies, with different investments, agricultural, agribusiness, already familiar with these terms. They have been already applying policies on human rights, on due diligence, looking at how their activities may impact third-party rights. But the main challenge in such an informal country like Peru is to share that concept of respect and widespread it to SMEs, to all the informal levels as well. Big real challenge, especially for this country that have so many SMEs. It is a complex challenge. It's time that we are heading towards a commitment that involve different economic, social, and cultural stakeholders of the country. Let's hope we get good results. I also want to see this an opportunity to restructure the pathway of development like the three speakers and also Rodrigo mentioned. We need to look at the development of our country, providing a priority, setting up coherent goals with a public and private partnership that will cover the need of all. I think it is a big challenge. We have legal tools. I believe the commitment of the different stakeholders in the country. If we do not do this, we may probably lose on competitiveness because Germany, Canada, Japan has included this in their supply chain. Canada said already that they won't buy any products to any business that do not have due diligence. incorporated into their business. We have set a great challenge. We need to articulate these development efforts. We'll have Jorge Yamamoto, who will be probably talking about well-being and satisfaction. I remember a few years ago when I was in the Hydrocarbon Institute and invited him over. He was asking how to get to know their actual expectations of populations. And he said, first of all, we need to focus on well-being. Let's not import them this concept. Let's not impose a concept from Lima on what they understand well-being. Let's listen to them. Let's hear what they have to say and build trust. This will open up the doors to a legitimate social dialogue. Trust building is essential, but we see that it's still at risk. And I would like to share a final reflection with all of you. The system of consensual have to look at representativeness as well at very different levels, at the three government levels, social dialogue processes. Whenever we think on representativeness, we should have that as main core. I think I'm not alone by thinking that lots of the representativeness challenges representing us. Big challenges then. We need to create these social dialogues so that we agree on this development vision. I think that we still need to have lots of hope to believe that the state and the company and civil society should all join forces because we are all responsible to contribute to facilitate to have a public control to build unity. Thank you, Juan Manuel.
Muchas gracias, Cecilia. Interesante de nuevo. Muy
Thank you, Cecilia. Very, very interesting. Well, in this block, we have had many women in this block. I would like to use 2 minutes because in the preamble, Rodrigo was telling us where he works. Rodrigo, tell us how is Uruguay approaching the agencies. I know they are not called agencies. Yes. It's called National Corporation for Development. Here, it's the public office, non-state public office. That means that the relationships with third parties are with private. Basically, what we do is to make infrastructure for others. There are government offices that do not want to take the risks implied in the development of infrastructure. However, they need it. Everybody needs it. Offices for themselves or because part of their activity requires that. Requires some type of infrastructure. So they come to us and sometimes they come with a project and we just make a competitive call to a company, contract, and manage the mass provided by the other. We do not finance anything. We manage the money that they give us, depending on the advance of the work, etc. Thank you. We're just on time. Thank you. I think there is an important experience that we can consider. Thank you for your participation. Well, that is the idea of the agency. Could have differences from country to country, but that is the concept. Thank you. Thank you, Paola. Now we finish with this block. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your punctuality. Kindly turn on your camera so we're going to take a picture of all the very interesting members of this blog. I would like to thank each one of the speakers and the panel members for sharing your experiences, and also our moderator, Juan Manuel Benitez. It's important to have these dialogue spaces for exchanging experiences, proposals, and ideas. Everything adds up and everything is useful. The idea is to generate an agenda to improve Peru and one of the spaces that need to be improved. Thank you very much. And now we are getting to the final block of this second Agromining Convention Agromin virtual platform. Block is changing social conflicts into opportunities. On day one, we look at all the different aspects. Now we have to see how social conflicts can be changed into opportunities. We are going to have especially that will be led by Mr. Manuel Bernales. He's a politologist, public manager, and planner by the Catholic University of Peru and the Center of High Military Studies. He has a diploma from the Inter-American Institute of Human Rights, president, former president of the Environmental Institute, and he is a consultant in specialized agencies of the UN, and he also works at the UNESCO in the Office for Education in Central America and Science for Latin America and the Caribbean. He is working in the National Institute of Planning, General Director of Coordination in Science and Technology at the Ministry of Health, General Director on the Energy and Mines, who presided the historical discussion of Peñaveco Agreement, and also in the cooperation of hydrological program of UNESCO. He has worked in 12 states of Latin America and the Caribbean. He's a consultant of the NGO Futuro Sostenible. I think he's the ideal person to be the leader of this last block. Good afternoon, welcome. Thank you, good afternoon. Can you hear me well? Yes. Okay. We are going to benefit from every second. I would like to convey my greetings. Very happy and with high sense of responsibility to be again in Agromin. I participated in the first Agromin, and we hope to continue with these contributions in the country. First of all, we are going to have the presentation from Eduardo Maza. He has a master's in advanced studies in political communication by the Complutense University of Madrid. He's a member of the Inter-American in Communications with a seat in Madrid. At present, he performs as external advisor of a political advisor in the Republic of Peru. He has directed communication teams in mining companies like Buenaventura, Denco, Shogun, Hierro Peru, Activos Marinos, public and private companies. He was also General Director of Social Communication at the Ministry of Interior and the head of institutional image in the judiciary. He started as a journalist in Panamericana TV and in Channel 7 and Channel 2. I give the floor to Eduardo for his presentation. You have 25 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to share this meeting that it is going to give a lot to talk because it is happening in a very important moment of the development of the country. This is a changing social conflicts into opportunities. I would like to mention a problem in the mining sector specifically for a long time. That is not an economic or environmental or technological problem. It is a social and political issue. Mining makes works abundantly. If at some time there was a delay in the compliance of commitments, that is explained and solved. There has to be a dynamic with the authorities around. And if there is a problem with the environment, that is solved. But there is something that for many years that has not been properly mapped. Uh, that's a research that I made and I share with you today. There is somebody who promotes the protests with an ideological and political agenda. The mining does not have a positive narrative sufficiently strong like the anti-mining or like the NGOs or some actors in the governments, regional or local governments, or now from the central government. If before it was difficult to work in mining with a pro right wing, now with a ideological government against mining, it's more complicated. And the response at the state level has been to create more dialogue. That is okay, but from the analysis I am going to share, it is a negative response in the short term. The problem is minimized, but it is not sufficient for the conflicts to increase. The proposal that I suggest is a proactive strategy from communication and education, taking care of the medium and long term with a battle against ideologies. I would like to begin with a recent report of social conflicts from the Ombudsman Office. 198 social conflicts, out of which 84 are linked to mining. According to the report, this is a record with the highest number of social conflicts since the report was produced. That's the latest indicator. The reasons of controversies issued by the Ombudsman Office: lack of communication from the executive, non-compliance of commitments by the companies, inadequate use of the land, contamination of the water that is used by the communities. This argument was used by the president of the Minister Cabinet to announce the shutdown of mines in Ayacucho. A very low perception of communities on the benefits of the mining activity. We're going to discuss this in a moment. Questionable quality and traceability of the public expenditure by the subnational government. And of course, the incomplete remediation of environmental liabilities left by the state through Centromin. The consequences. Well, all Peruvians are suffering from this. Provision of public services like education, sanitation, public works, health has not improved in decades. There are no significant improvements in the life quality of people who live around the mining activity. 41% of social and environmental conflicts take place in 48 districts, which are the poorest of the country. And the rural poverty in percentage 44.4, 3 times more than the poverty in urban sectors. Institutional response in front of the conflicts. As I said before, to create more dialogue opportunities, which is rather good. Many entities of the state have created that, but I think if the problems persist, we need to complement that strategy. For instance, the Ombudsman Office in 2017 reported some problems like the instability, the political instability, because the dialogue contributes, but it does not replace the state. The offices for the management of conflicts or dialogue do not make decisions on social demands. So the problem keeps going. Limited intra-state coordination and low culture of collaboration, the territorial vision of the problems, it continues, and the management of compliance of agreements. It's 54% in 2017. I tried to locate a recent figure and I wasn't able to get it. So that 54%, I don't know if it continues as the average or whether that has changed. What is happening? More conflicts, more social conflicts, the poor image of mining. But the counterpart is that the mining companies generate more taxes. This year, they will pay 3 times more for taxes. Governments only spend 60% in the best of cases. This contradiction led me to make this analysis. What happens if mining does so much work, if mining has social responsibility programs, if mining is paying a lot of taxes in favor of the community? Why the rejection of the sector? And it was observed in the elections 2021, where 70% of the vote, almost 95%, the votes of the government party were from people who are around the mining operations. Something is wrong. And the conflicts are increasing. Here the map, and the first elections round, the red ones, they are against the mining, and in the second round, similarly, the Congress of the Republic is very fragmented, and we have parliament members with an open vocation anti-mining that definitely they will continue acting like that in the next 5 years. I was asking, is this responsibility, I mean, this responsibility, who has the responsibility? Is it shared? Who is sharing the responsibility? The next stakeholders are those that vote from the state, from the mining company, the guilds, and the media pay a lot of attention. And that's a short-term attention. I'm not saying that they should not be dealt with, but they are not the only ones. And here, I used to call it anti-mining block, but I think it would be correct to say confluences, anti-mining confluences. And here the actors, temporary actors, change with time. I have typified 4 of them. The opportunistic politicals that start talking against the mining companies because they want to have a public position or to maintain the one they have. The population has the fear for contamination risk. So that new strategy that I will tell you about it will be applied. The citizens that are anxious to get benefits in a legal way. And the fourth one is the citizens or leaders who want to get benefits in an illegal manner. The first one and the fourth one should be responded by the authorities. I would like to focus in item number 2 and number 3. There is a lot of attention from the media, from the mining companies, from the guilds, and from the state, because that is where conflict generates. Where are the hands that broke the cradles of the social conflicts to make them in crisis with violence? here in the anti-mining confluences, permanent ones, the ones that have an agenda, a political agenda, anti-mining, anti-globalization, anti-capital markets, that look for a cultural hegemony. They have the trend to attack the mining and other productive sectors. The naturalistic ecologism that is almost pushing us to go back to the pre-industrial time. And the indigenous, not from the protection rights, but only sectarism. And this is linked to populist movements and leaders that operate from outside the government. They have an agenda, part of a research that I made. They have two manuals anti-mining. The first one, where you see the position, it's very clear. They say it is a political fight and you cannot trust technical arguments that all miners like. And the political objective is that population does not know or experiment the benefits of mining. This is the second anti-mining manual from 2014 in Mexico. And here with this graphic, it's like 120 pages. They encourage the fight against social classes. They state that life has to be defended against the death represented by mining, and also looking at the protection of water and land against the mining industry. There is a social polarization with regard to mining projects. They are not getting sufficient attention. They have a short, medium, and long-term agenda, their own narrative. They promote a cultural battle, educational, ideological battle, and they don't invest one soul in social works. They invest in press, propaganda, training, micro-segmentation of messages for youth, women, children, religious and non-religious people, etc. And these actors, many of them are already in the government. In policy, nothing is casual. The anti-miners are also operators focused on the community, and the pro-miners are operators focused on the production and the use of advanced technology. Anti-miners look for the legitimacy of the people. The pro-miners are always in the legality. Here, for instance, this was published yesterday in Caretas, shows what we're talking about. They already appointed the Vice Minister of Territorial Governance, and he works in an NGO. And when she signed the closure for the mine site, he did it with Secretary General of Movadef. And here another example. The Republic newspaper in 2019, Congress wants that the commitments of the mining companies be supervised by regional governments. So with this, the regional government will have much more power than the Ministry of Energy and Mines. Yesterday, this is a news, they are assessing that the regions will decide what economic activities will be allowed. Well, if the regional president is no pro-mining, could shut down an operation or could not grant the permit. This information there is a flow of this type of news. Well, really, they are disseminating the information of a scandal, the day-to-day And that is why the population is more focused on social conflicts than in a pro-mining agenda. Those that are responsible for malpractice and also for omission, I have this chart. The state has a role, the pro-miners have one role, the central government at present is anti-miner. The regional and local governments, we will see what happens in the next elections. The regulator organizations, they have the rules of the game. They have to protect the rules of the game. The role of pro-miners, the companies in Peru, it is not enough to have a good operation, but you have to take care of the environment and to have social corporate responsibility. In my opinion, given the present circumstances, they should have a higher role, and the role of the press, traditional press and digital press, I think the word impartiality should be highlighted for the role of the press. If you analyze the news about the topic pro-miner vis-a-vis all the social conflict focus from the anti-mining side, we find a huge difference. I insist on the topic of co-responsibility. There is investment of millions in programs and projects of social responsibility. All, regardless of that, there is a reject of the population to the support. The population of the mining corridor of the South voted for Peru Libre, the anti-miner. I do not readjust my strategy on the cultural battle. I feel that I am co-responsible on what is happening. I think all of you are aware that there was a meeting with the leaders of the National Society of Mining and the president of the Minister Council said that this could be expanded upon request. This is going to generate a new conflict because the allocation of works, the vice president of a committee disagrees, and he thinks that the prime minister is rendering services to the mining companies, and that this is there is a lot of responsibility of what happens falls on the Society of Mining and the large Peruvian miners that never understood that they needed to promote an intensive and continuous ideological war, communicational and cultural. There are efforts like the president of Agromin, Mr. Rómulo Mucha, and also other people, but they are not part of a bigger strategy. And I think that is the suggestion I would like to make. We need a strategy to win the cultural battle, developing a national program using agromining as a leverage and the narrative on the benefits for all Peruvians, an educational crusade using those messages in schools, institutes, and universities, communication crusade to take away from the anti-miners the flags of defense of ecology and human rights. Spaces like Agromin are necessary, should be complemented with others for people in urban areas and communities using friendly languages. The space that you live is the space that is taken by an anti-miner, anti-system, anti-democracy, anti-state of the law. Social conflicts are not going to change into opportunities of development if we do not get the urban and rural population be aware and value the benefits of agro-mining. Definitely, given the current circumstance, we need change immediately. Thank you. I would close my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you, Eduardo.
Para después de la presentación de Hernán, en que quedará abierto unos minutos de tiempo para comentarios adicionales o subrayar o hacer una
We
síntesis.
will have some specific time to summarize at the very end on some specific issues that you may find interesting or those that I will reject. Hernán Cuba, he's a lawyer of Santa Maria University of Arequipa. He has an MA of Alcalá, España, Alcalá de Henares University of Spain, another MA of the Católica University of Peru. He plays a role of arbitration services for the government. He knows pretty well all private and public procurement processes. He's a professor at Centrum.
Instituto especializado en negocios de la Universidad Católica, de la Pontificia Universidad Católica y en la Universidad
And
San Martín de
at
Porres.
San Martin de Porras University. He had several public servant positions. He was part of the transparency business initiatives of the World Bank. He has also worked in the High Commissioner Human Rights Office at Geneva. And he has worked in the Ombudsman, chief of the Ombudsman in several positions and locations in Peru, in Madre de Dios 4 years and 8 years in Moquegua. He has worked as business development at PricewaterhouseCoopers in several locations in Peru as well. Hernan has 25 minutes to hold his speech. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you to the organizing committee, to Agromin, and to all of you. I will now share my screen so that I can start with my presentation. We're going to be discussing on the transformation of conflict, social conflicts to opportunities. And this is probably two main agencies we need to talk about when dealing with social conflicts. The Ombudsman Office that make difference in between conflict and violence. Conflict is part of human history. Definitions of conflict are the ones that we tend to use for more than 80 years. We have the presidency of ministers, which made a different point to the Ombudsman Office. They identified conflicts from a political perspective as the link in between the intermediation capabilities within the relationship with citizens and from the response management. So there is no counterposition or antagony in between these different definitions. These are two different approaches, therefore they are complementary. How have we been handling social conflicts? We've been doing the same. Example of 2008 when there was a discussion on the mining tax. These are images from Moquegua and images from Tacna in October that same year. Montalvo Bridge, the sequestration of 16 police officers, the fire of Tacna municipality, the Conga conflict a few years later. And in 2016, the Ombudsman Office stated that there were 171 social conflicts. Currently, this month, we have seen working and dialogue in Las Bambas, in Moquegua, and different locations, trying to solve these social conflicts. So we've been trying to manage social conflicts the same way for almost 20 years, independently of their origins. Social conflicts are to be solved within these dialogue roundtables, technical roundtables, or whatever name we use for them. They become negotiation spaces where which main objective is to create the transfer of budget, so negotiation for the transferring of budget for public works execution. We need to sum the technological impact, social media, IT, cell phones, mobile phones that have been used. We had 6 presidents, and the average of ministers in power is 8 months. DG position lasts 16 months in average. In average, you have normally regional governors that stay on power for 3 years. Every 2 years, there's a change of civil society organizations, NGOs, depending on their own statute. This is the context we've been developing. Wilacniki is a newsletter from the Ministers' Council. 18 years of traceability of the Ombudsman Office, counting on social conflicts is even much better than the report that the Secretariat progress shows. I would like to emphasize that we have different sources of information, these two different sources from these two different entities. They are initiatives from NGOs, from some specific sectors, but these are probably the main official sources of information to be used in order to understand social conflicts. Two different approaches, again, human right approach by the Ombudsman and governance on the PCM, and two different methodologies. One is the traceability from the Ombudsman, where we see that conflicts could be latent, escalation of conflicts, there's a crisis, de-escalation in dialogue. This is a methodology they apply, whereas we have the GSD, which is the analysis carried out at all different regions, but some are more important due to the political importance or impact, or the importance on infrastructure, or the working on different institutions. So these are not antagonic. We should need to actually understand those different points of view so that we can have a better understanding of conflicts. Independently from the sources, economic, environmental, structural, or institutional, conflicts will always exist, and there are different type of stakeholders: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Eduardo mentioned quite clearly that there are specific triggers. It could be a political or a hidden agenda. Local candidates for regional government elections, in environmental accident or a environmental asset issue, everything that will be called a trigger for a specific conflict. You have a crisis or a balance. act that would lead to the creation of a high-level commission. As a product of this commission, there's a signing of specific documentation, commitment, pledges, and processes, and in case there's non-compliance, high level of frustration, social conflicts will come back, or those could be increased. Those commitments are handled by authorities that in sometimes they change every 8 months, or they are going through trials, or there's a change. The agreements have to be reviewed. And again, you have this whole circle of a crisis or violent act that will bring back a commission with the same or different stakeholders, new commitments, new agreements. So in brief, we are actually trying to calm down the fire, but we're not actually looking at the causes, the root causes. If we look at the actual root causes of a conflict, if we have structural or institutional causes, the state should provide the legal framework in order to cover those structural failures. If 44% of the population in rural communities are poor, they do not have access to drinking water, there's a political willingness to build a water uh, drainage, implementation of NEC contracts. On NEC contracts, I would just want to, they are called NEC because they're new engineering contracts. This is the last version, number 4, different to our regular public investment, allowed to create packages for projects. Let's say there is a need to build thousands of hospitals of different size, specialties, in different locations. Under our regular public investment, we need to have those 1,000 different procurement processes to work on technical profiles. After working on the profiles again, you have these thousands of agreements, thousand arbitration processes that all will get lost because of deficiencies on file, and works will not be executed. Needs will not be covered, and conflicts will prevail. If we use this NEC type of contract, one sole bidding will cover all these 1,000 contracts. And that bidding process, the contractor will be the one taking design risk and execution of works. NEC are standardized contracts. Dispute resolution under the execution of works, because delivery is actually the aim, instead of looking at traditional processes where works will stop and then you go to arbitration and works won't move on and there's no incentive for delivery. On the contrary, through NEC contracts, there are a specific incentive for early delivery and also incentives for bonus or success bonuses, and after the execution, of course, and controllership surveillance. These NEC type of contracts have been applied during the Pan American Games of 2019 and Pan American Games as well. We need to change the way of works execution. Budget is there. What we also have is corruption. Unfortunately, the General Controllership highlighted that 20,000 million soles were lost because of uh, illicit practices this year. So 10% of the public budget get lost due to corruption. And we will probably pay our external debt if with that money, if we sum up all the money that we lost because of corruption. Therefore, we need the government to strengthen the capacity so that they could include this new type of processes so that we could actually go into the root causes and try to cover with good public projects the filling of gaps. Additional note to NEC contracts, the Peruvian type of NEC contracts are not like the government to government agreements. That's still a pending issue because I won't have enough time to cover this. Social or political conflicts. If we look at other type of causes, you need to have a no, that specific plan to fight against corruption. The example I just shared, you have these 20 million soles that got lost. That there should be something to be done. Impunity cannot prevail. We need to strengthen regional and national representation, and maybe this would be politically incorrect, but we definitely need to improve the representative in our Congress so that we can increase the number of national politicians, and we also need to work on restructuring parties so that we could have a co-liability in between national and regional parties. There is a responsibility, shared responsibility between the government at the three different levels. You need to bring back the different plans at the local level, and this could be translated to a multi-annual budgetary planning so that you can actually fulfill the projects that have been committed and not just simply changing every 2 years or every 8 months in a new planning of new commitments that by the end will not be fulfilled. We do not need more law. We do not need more international treaty to respect human rights. We need a better management of resources. How the UEFA or CERFOR or CERNAM try to work on their responsibilities if they do not have a better budget for oversight, for controlling, for supervising. If the causes are economic, the session will be then on creation of formal jobs. Let's say agro, bio jobs that with this approach on sustainability, not only just by looking at looking at social responsibility, it is voluntary here in Peru, but it should also create more commitment. The European standards on social responsibility and business conduct said that the actions of companies have significant impacts on the economy. If causes are environmental, eh, stronger sanctions, environmental oversight. If we need to look at the specific incidents, you need to look for remediation and rehabilitation. You need to intervene with some sort of bond in to avoid illegal extractive actions and just simply avoid the signing up of agreements that will not be complied. We need to eradicate, eliminate illegal extractive activities, mining, lodging, species traffic, human trafficking are somehow related to other illegal activities. We're talking about a formal mining, but we heard less from illegal mining or illegal extraction of resources. If environmental causes are the root causes, again, let's look at the UN main principles on human rights and business, and you have the OECD directives for corporations. And it also means a great opportunity, the action plan on human rights, which are not just simply rules or legal rulings, but a group of actions that will actually protect people and human rights defenders' lives, and not impunity of those that, due to the legal framework, try to go against a public right. Of course, together with the National Human Rights Plan, we need to look at the root causes, not the effects. Companies should include the shared value creation with different stakeholders in the environmental and social influence area, direct and indirect areas. The shared value strategy should be included in all different stages of the value chain. Remember, we are a developing country which has 130 billion US dollars and social infrastructure gaps. So there is a need for an alliance in between extractive sectors and the states to create this business climate and sustainable socially agreement that it's needed to cover it. We need to include NEC contracts to have a better public investment process and focalize specific agreements for water, and this specific trust should probably be used through NEC contracts by looking at the economic balance at the regional level, and this should be understood not only as an anti-industry or anti-activity approach, but rather than a planning and development tool. And again, not as a threat against a specific activity. We need also to include multidisciplinary teams to open up dialogue for the most important projects to get out of this loop, this conflict loop, and lead us to development. This was my presentation. Thank you, Manuel, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Tenemos 12 minutos más, según mi reloj.
Thank you. We have 12 more minutes. Otherwise, let me know.
Estamos muy bien con el tiempo, perdón. Disculpe,
Yes.
estamos muy bien.
Yeah, we're okay with time. Thank you.
Yo tengo solo una pregunta.
I only have one question.
En la presentación de
In the presentation of this topic that we made 2 years ago,
se tocaron principalmente los mismos temas.
the same topics were discussed. I would like, if you believe it convenient,
Aceptan la pregunta,
if you take my question,
responder a lo siguiente.
that is,
¿Qué es más urgente?
what is more urgent now?
¿Qué es más urgente? Porque no es lo mismo lo que
It is not the same what we were analyzing
hace
extensively 2 years ago than what is happening now. We are in the same topic, but what is urgent now? Or you want to say it in a different way? That is a question to both of you. And I give you the floor to give your opinions. Eduardo, you have the floor. Manuel, I think that definitely 2 years ago and now it is urgent that the mining companies, well, there was something I didn't show you in my presentation about to have a motto, no more separated streams. The economic aspect should not be separated. It has its results. Economic results would not be sustainable if the state and for reforms, if we didn't have a social climate that would promote investment. 2 years or 3 years ago, I think that this year, what is happening with the change of government and what is happening in the Congress doesn't have a vision of mining. It is more a state approach. So I think the urgent is to close the efforts and now the mining entrepreneurs, the guilds, and also the media should get together and would be able to generate a strategy that would enable mining through the taxes that it pays become stronger because the prices of minerals have reached a historical record almost in all the minerals that we produce. And this is the opportunity that should not be left aside. As there is a convergence of anti-miners actors at national and international level, they reach agreements successfully, that would be a failure for us because I believe that the urgent thing is that business people should hold the flag of the cultural battle and face it as Engineer Romulo Mucho is doing it and other people, but it should not be isolated events. Well, Manuel, I fully agree with what Eduardo just said. We need to speak more and show more the positive impact of the extractive industry, the positive impacts of mining, how these positive impacts can also strengthen other economic activities like agriculture. Well, Ica is an agro exporter region, but Ica doesn't have a water supply. So they need to have the reserves to guarantee the water reserves. From Ayacucho and Huancavelica, these dams that need to be built, what is the budget coming from? From the taxes. Who pays for more taxes? The mining activity. So this is a call to the National Society of Mining, a call to the Agro Export Guild, and a call to the media. We have to speak more about the benefits and the positive results of the mining industry. We are entering the second decade of the century. We have computers, vehicles will require new minerals that we have in the country, in our wonderful country. It is not the country of wonders. It's a wonderful country, but the deposit of lithium in Puno, if there is not legal stability, if there is not a development of the regulations, if there is not extraction of resources to protect the environment or the studies of environmental impact to be carried out, if there is no development of the regulatory framework, how could we aspire to build a mine for lithium and to build a plant that will not export, but will only export lithium batteries for cars, cell phones, computers, etc. We are missing the development train. I hope it won't be the case like the guano and saliter, and now the minerals. How can we call it? Three main losses because we lost the natural resources, guano and saliter, because that was replaced by synthetic fertilizers, and also the replacement of rubber and now copper that could be replaced soon, or the petroleum that will be replaced by renewable energies. And we are not taking advantage of our resources. And that mineral in the hills. And the second impact, positive impact, is that there has to be a monitoring in the use of public resources. Really, as they say, in my own land, I get very sick to see that 20 billion soles are lost in 1 year. That would mean one or two high-level hospitals, I don't know how many millions for COVID for all the national population. Really, it is a shame that there is not the proper fight against the corruption at the level of the central government. Well, I would like to underline the following. Well, a good part of your presentation agree there are some discrepancies, that is normal, and that is it's positive. And several presentations since the first day, there is no time to make all the list of coincidences or agreements, but those who are participating with us, you should look at this topic in relation with other topics. When we talk about territory and water, promotion of agricultural promotion, or any other of the big topics, all of them are related to conflict. There is a species of matrix among each one of those big topics that have been presented. There is something with which I would like to ask you for a telegram that has not been said until today, is about the need to build a national project. One thing is to have sustainable development objectives, and another thing is to have a national project that responds what to do in the coast, what to do in the ports, with the agromining, what to do with the 2/3 of the national territory in the Amazon region. In practice, we do not have a national project, and I think Agromin contributes to this, but I would like to say or ask you if this is enough or do we need something else? Can there be a state that works without politics and without political parties? This is for your last intervention. Thank you very much. Well, following the order, I think I don't believe in isolated strings. I think the state is just one and should be the driver of investment. Together with the private sector, it should be the lever that contributes to the development of the country. Obviously, there should be a national project. CEPLAN, at some point, Manolo told me that they had that objective, But now, I don't remember now, but it doesn't have the long-term vision, and unfortunately, the short-term nature of these governments involved in corruption with a very marked ideological bias. They cannot have a vision of middle and long term. And how much can that serve in the present circumstances? And what comes in the future? We should have a program, a national crusade, where we should all be involved. But I think for the time being, it's just an illusion. But the Congress goes in separate ways, the central government goes in a different way, and the regional governments, because of the elections in the future, we don't know where they are heading to. Do we continue with the illusion of good government? Yes, we have to continue with this struggle. We have to put the country in the first place. I think that there is something writing of that national plan that is reflected in the constitution, but that project of development is in our constitution and we have to respect it. But I think it is important not to understand that one activity rules over other activity. Agro export will generate that we have fruits and vegetables that feed our gastronomy and our tourism, and transportation that feeds tourism and water and sanitation service, and therefore it fits the need of infrastructure, health, and education. It is a whole that we don't have to leave the anti-mining, anti-everything, and we continue working, and we have to look at the development of the country as a whole. I think we should remember that we as a country, we have to overcome poverty. In 1 year, we went back 10 years in the fight against poverty. We have to retake that pace, looking at a higher economic growth, generating employment, allowing the state to meet the needs of the population. I am convinced that in this wonderful country named Peru, I would like to finish thanking you for the opportunity of sharing these reflections. They are not politically correct. They have been made with documents and a heart, with love to the country, with a sense of responsibility. I hope these contributions will be heard in order to have a program and a convergency, and not to continue thinking that with all systems and institutions, we will be able to get better results. Thank you very much. And we have completed our time. Paola, you have the floor. Thank you, Manuel Bernales. We are very grateful for this brilliant last block. Kindly keep your cameras on for the picture, and as they says, if you want changes, you cannot be doing always the same thing. If you want to have a different result, you need to change to generate changes. And we also think that everybody has been able to state their opinion freely, because it is not what is politically correct, but what is necessary in this moment to reach agreements and to improve. That is what we need. Join all the forces, generating a path to improve and to get to the solution that Peru deserves. Thank you very much for accompanying us in this wonderful final block. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have seen during these 3 very intensive days, but extremely fruitful, we always got to the same place. We ran short of time. They were circumstantial, real problems that they deserve to be developed by separate to elaborate and to deepen on the topic because we believe change is possible and because there are many professionals that really think in the correct way. The thing is to get them together, to join forces, to join experiences from abroad in order to get to achieve objectives for Peru. We are we are very close to the closing ceremony. We would like to greet everybody in the social media. We have completed the plenary sessions after 3 long days of learning, exchange of knowledge, visit to our fair, technological fair, to the round tables for business, to the networking space, and to the visits to museums, showrooms, among others. To begin with our ceremony of the closing ceremony, we are going to give the floor to Engineer Rómulo Mucho. We have seen him in different moments to the President of Agromin 2021. He's going to give us a message about the conclusions and the recommendations after this very interesting event. Engineer Rómulo Mucho, welcome again. Good afternoon. You have the floor now. Can you get in touch with Engineer Mucho? Meanwhile, we would like to thank the sponsors, collaborators, junior collaborators. We also would like to especially thank the media partners who have accompanied us, all the companies and institutions that trusted in this second convention Agromin to accompany us through the services and the proposals. One of the speakers said he received the invitation that mining and agriculture would be together in the same event. Well, it can be done. These are two disciplines that can be together. A lot has been said during the 3 days. So to all the institutions and the private companies, public companies, we want to thank them for your trust. And we really hope we will have a third convention and that this event will be repeated every year, trying to generate and raise awareness that it can be done. Could you tell me if we have the near future? Let's wait some minutes. And we are going to talk about our strategic allies to renew our gratitude.
Del Agua, la ANA, Cámara de Comercio Perú-Australia, Cámara de Comercio Peruano-Sudafricana, CITE Papa, Core Foundation, Downing Teal, Instituto Geológico Minero y Metalúrgico, el INGEMET, el Instituto Crecer, ONG Futuro Sostenible, el Ministerio de Agricultura y Riego, la Sociedad Geográfica de Lima y Women CEO Perú. Todos ellos han sido en esta oportunidad nuestros aliados estratégicos a quienes reiteramos el
agradecimiento and we thank them because they were very valuable in their support. We would like also to remind you that we had media partners in this event.
Agroexportaciones, Energiminas, Exportar, Global Business Report, Agronoticias, Proactivo, Revista Tour Gourmet, Ecomin, Todo minería y energía, norte minero y actualidad minera. También un reconocido agradecimiento a ellos. Y por supuesto, vamos a agradecer a nuestro
We would like to
patrocinador, que es
thank our
Instituto de
sponsor,
Perú,
that was Southern Peru Corporation, a branch in
auspiciador
Peru,
la Sociedad Minera Cerro Verde
sponsor
y
Sociedad Minera
colaboradores
Cerro
la
Verde,
Asociación
and
para el
the
Desarrollo
collaborators,
Agropecuario
the AGA,
Sostenible, Compañía Minera Poderosa, Consorcio
Poderosa Mining
Energético de
Company,
Huancavelica, Conengua,
Huancavelica,
Compañía de
Conegua,
Minas Buenaventura,
Compañía de Minas Buenaventura, British Embassy, Ferreiros, Hub de Perú, IPESA, Macusani Yellow Cake, American Lithium,
Montali, Minera
Minsud,
Yanacocha,
Yanacocha
y
Mine,
Compañía
Newmont,
Minera
and
Antamina.
Antamina
Colaborador
Mining.
Junior, Goldfields La
Junior
Cima,
collaborators,
MMG Las
Colby
Bambas,
La Cima,
Pan
NG
American
Los
Silver
Bambas,
Perú,
Pan American Silver Perú,
Minera Boró, Miskichilca. Todos
Doro,
ellos
Minera,
también queremos
Miskilchilca, all of
agradecer
them.
por
We
habernos
would like to thank
acompañado. Y
them.
ahora
For,
sí,
and
en
now,
pantalla
I see on
vamos a
the
cederle la
screen,
palabra al
we are
ingeniero
going to give
Rómulo
the
Mucho
floor to
para que
Engineer
nos
Rómulo
brinde
Mucho
las
for
conclusiones
his conclusions
y todo lo que se ha podido arribar luego de estas 3 fructíferas
after
jornadas.
these
Ingeniero Mucho,
very
buenas
fruitful
tardes.
days. Good afternoon, Engineer Mucho. Good afternoon, Paula. Again, I would like to thank you and congratulate you for your excellent work during these very hard working days. It has been a hard work for learning for all of us. I would like to congratulate the last 3 speakers and to Manolo. It was very interesting. To all Excellency authorities, Diego Llosa Velázquez, Vice Minister of Foreign Trade of the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Tourism, to the ambassadors that join us in this closing ceremony, to the members of the organizing committee of Agromin 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, all participants to the second edition of Agromin, Agro and Mining United by Nature. It is an honor to close the second edition of Agromin that during 3 days in the virtual platform at the TechSoup seat in Trujillo has united 2 important sectors, mining and agriculture. In the second edition of Agromin, we had the opportunity to gather specialists of first level and entrepreneurs of the agro and mining sector. They have exchanged experiences and shown in a tangible way that it is possible to have this binomial that is developing our country. During 3 days in Agromin 2021, they discussed important topics like mining and agriculture 50 years from now, the management of water resources, successful responses in the Peruvian agriculture and mining, sustainable territorial development, competitiveness for agriculture and mining, conditions for the development of Peru, the proposal of agriculture and mining investments and the efficient use of the resources, governance for a shared vision, and economic reactivation to reactivate the development of the country, among others. One of the most expected blocks in the first day was the climate change, which gathered outstanding speakers like Ollie Olson, senior researcher of the Stockholm Environmental Institute, Maria Fernande Valle, representative for Latin America of American Softwoods Latam, Quijandría, regional director of the IUCN. Also, in the block of water resources, we found Luis Gerovich, senior professor, Nicolás de Pierole, the manager of water resources in Southern Peru, Copper, and Antti Pasanen of the Institute of Geological Survey of Finland. On the second day, the block Law of Mining and Second Agricultural Reform, we had the participation from Gabriel Amaro, Executive Director of the Association of Agricultural Producers of Peru, Augusto Cauti, former Vice Minister of Mines, and Milton Bongese, Director of Videnza Consultants. Likewise, Dr. Rosa Galvez, member of the Senate in Canada, through the Canadian Embassy. She talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. In the closing of Agromin 2021, we developed the panel Investments for Development in charge of Fernando Bravo, Director of Goldman Sachs, and Marcelo de Andrade, President of ProNatura International. Also, Jose Carlos de Pierola, expert in sustainability and consultant for the IDB, and Diego Macera, manager of the Peruvian Institute of Economy, IPE, developed the topic Closing the Gaps. Among the conclusions that were given during these 3 days, we have, considering that water is an important resource for both sectors, it is urgent to improve the water security to satisfy the needs of consumption, economic growth, and the general well-being of the current population without uh, endangering the satisfaction of the future generations. We should have official water information of quality planning in a multi-sectoral approach, the increase of the supply and the use of water resource, formalizing the rights of the water use, improving the efficiency in the use, protect and recover the quality of water, and prevent risk for due to climate events and the climate change. The successful experiences shown by Sierra Productiva with mining companies is a tangible evidence that agriculture and mining complement each other and contribute to the local development and in some cases modify the economic activity in the area. It is fundamental to include a mechanism of saving and provision for canon due to its nature that is volatile and transitory. A fund of savings and stabilization would limit the availability of resources to the authorities at moments of high prices at level international, and it would allow to dispose them when they drop. A new way of government needs to be implemented for the world in agriculture and the rural world, fostering more and more and better markets for family agriculture. Also, the industrialization of agriculture and the product transformation of the field, generating safety in terms of water, increasing the development of infrastructure of irrigation, and also the promotion of services and fostering the agriculture and the forestry. It was recommended to implement the water canon and that the National Water Authority will be an autonomous institution like the Central Reserve Bank due to its technical management and independence from politics. The growth projection of private investment in 2021 is 24.5%. This is supported in the dynamic observed along the year, and it is due to self-construction and projects of investment. We make a call to the government not to generate political uncertainty to continue growing. In Agromin, we wanted to show the best practices in the sector. That is why I thank the participation of the mining company that presented the technical papers. A special recognition to the winners of the technical papers. Poderosa, a new variety of sustainable potato and resilient to climate change as a result of a strategic alliance agriculture mining. The authors are Manuel Antonio Gastelo Benavides, Associate Senior Researcher in the International Center of Potato, Jose Ronald Otiniano Villanueva, Research Coordination for Agriculture in the NGO, the Asociación Pataz, Héctor Antonio Cabrera Hoyos, researcher in the cultivation of potato at the National Institute of Agricultural Innovation. Juan Miguel Pérez Vázquez, Executive Secretary in Association Pataz. The other technical paper is the Virtuous Circle in the Agriculture in the District of La Joya. The authors are Pablo Andrés Alcázar, Manager of Public Affairs, Communications and Community Relations in Sociedad Minera Cerro Verde, Gunter Cuentas Guamán, Supervisor of Community Affairs in Sociedad Minera Cerro Verde. Special recognition and thanks to the members of the organizing committee and to the official institutions, embassies, and commercial offices of the countries of Germany, Australia, Canada, Chile, the United States, Finland, Ireland, Israel, Morocco, Mexico, United Kingdom, Dominican Republic, Czech Republic, Russia, South Africa, Sweden, Taipei, and Turkey. Their interest and support has been very valuable for Agromin to be something possible. We want to thank the technical team in TechSoup and the team in Agromin. I want to thank them for moving on this event regardless the limitations of the pandemics and the political circumstances. Thank you for the support received from our sponsors and collaborators and the media. We are certain that we will continue growing and improving. From the first edition, we have set a milestone that's important in the history of the country. I am sure that our experience will be replicated in South America. Once more, thank you for the participation of all of you at the second convention Agromining Agromin 2021 virtual platform. I would just like to add something. Speaking of the economic growth of 2021, I think the economic growth of 2021 should be in the same order. We hope it will be like that according to the macroeconomic framework. In the last months, there have not been problems. We will meet again in the next edition, which we hope will be a face-to-face convention, Agromin 2023. Well, as circumstances may permit. Thank you very much, dear friends. Thank you, Engineer Mucho, for your work and also for a quick summary of the fundamental topics and the conclusions achieved after these 3 interesting days. And as Engineer Mucho, there was a contest of technical works. So we are going to give the floor to Engineer Carlos Amati, who is a member of the organizing committee of Agromin and also member of the Committee of Technical Papers, so he can tell us a little bit more about this contest and the winners. Thank you, Engineer Amat. Your microphone is off. Well, a big hug to all the participants, to all the team, extraordinary participants and panelists. This is an example that Peruvians give being together with different opinions and different professional and personal experiences. We get together to look at these very valuable experiences and to build a team of trust and hard work and service for the country. This experience should be generalized in each region, in each province, in each district. So to show that when we work together, mining and agriculture contribute to the progress, not only because of the economic results, but because when we work in mining and agriculture, we generate citizenship, the growth of personal values and responsibility, creative responsibility, sharing experiences, sharing costs, and sharing results. This is solidarity, active solidarity. That is why the criteria for the contest were some examples of success with specific results that could be measured many years that mining is providing financial support, and that's something. In this forum, there was a requirement for the management capacity for the project to strengthen the participation of farmers. The second criteria is that the actors of these projects have been the farmers, but they were associated with the support from other institutions of civil society, but it was the case of Arequipa, the municipality, in the case of the winning project Poderosa with NGOs. The third criteria was the participation of the producers in the results that could be replicated and multiplied around the country. These 4 criteria were used to select, and I congratulate on behalf of the committee that selected these proposals. I would like to congratulate Poderosa. As Romulo mentioned, the members, the authors, they talk about a new variety of sustainable potato that is resilient to the climate change as a result of the strategic alliance of agriculture and mining. And the second one was this virtuous agricultural virtuous cycle in the district of La Joya, supported by Cerro Verde and the professionals that were already mentioned. Two experiences, one in Patás, La Libertad, another in La Joya, Arequipa, that are examples for these experiences to replicate all over the Peru. I am very proud of having the opportunity to participate in this event. Thank you very much. And I see a great future. I wish a great future to everyone. Congratulations to Romulo and his team.
Y por esta introducción.
Thank you for your words and thank you for mentioning the award winners. Manuel Antonio Gastelo Benavides, he's a senior associate of National Potato Institute. He is representing the first winner, Poderosa, a new sustainable potato type resistant to climate change. It's part of Mining Agriculture Strategic Alliance. We will give the floor to him. Congratulations. He's representing the winner team. We were going to watch a short video on his project.
Vamos a compartir entonces el video para que conozcamos brevemente lo que ha sido este proyecto.
We're going to watch this short video.
En la Sierra Norte del Perú, el cultivo de la papa es uno de los más importantes. Sin embargo, este es afectado por la rancha, principal enfermedad de cultivo. Los agricultores tienen que realizar, en algunas ocasiones, más de 10 aplicaciones de fungicidas para controlarla y no perder el cultivo, incrementando el costo de producción en aproximadamente un 20%.
La variedad de papa poderosa es un ejemplo de trabajo colaborativo que puede existir entre las instituciones de investigación y desarrollo agrícola y las empresas mineras, en beneficio de los agricultores de su zona de influencia, generando variedades sustentables y resilientes al cambio climático.
Sustainable varieties resistant to climate change. One of the great results of this alliance in between mining and agriculture is this new type of potato.
Agrario con la empresa minera generan la variedad poderosa como tecnología sostenible y resiliente al cambio climático para atender la demanda de los productores de su ámbito de influencia.
En las provincias de Sánchez Carrión y Patás en la región La Libertad,
In Sánchez Carrión and Patás, in the influence area of Poderosa Mining Company, potato crops are the baseline for the food production and food security of the area. With this type of potato, the producer will reduce their production expenses that will be translated into more income and a better quality of life. Will be supporting the achievement of the sustainable goals. This new variety is a result of hard work for so many years. It is so important for us because it allowed us to have a new genetic resource for La Libertad farmers. They could work on a profitable economic activity and cultivate so that they could have benefits. We will be promoting this type of potatoes so that all farmers around the country will benefit from it.
Felicitaciones y aquí pudimos ver
Congratulations. We were able to have a look at this really interesting project made of hard work. I will now give the floor to Manuel Gastelo Benavides. Congratulations to you. A brief words in representation of the whole team. I am representing the team. Poderosa variety is the result of collaboration in between private, public, and farmers work. Pest fighting and has been essential for potato crop production. Sometimes we see its impacts affecting crops along the year. Production could be lost due to this pest, but this variety is this pest resistant and it's resilient to climate change. It was created with the support of the International Potato Institute in mining work, and this variety allowed us to improve the quality of life of the farmers of the Libertad Highlands and the agriculture producers in Peru, because we could use less pesticides and protect the health of producers and consumers alike. This variety is being cultivated in La Libertad Highlands, benefiting 3,500 producers and indirectly 9,000 producers with high yields compared to Aramarilis type of potato traditionally cultivated in this area. The center has also supported with Canchan, Pericholi varieties that are also cultivated in the area from farmers, and it's also well consumed. Amarilis is also used in the highlands of Cajamarca and La Libertad. These varieties have collaborated in the increase of yield from 11 tons to 3 tons per hectare. Therefore, we believed yield was increased due to the entry of this new variety. Engineer Ronald Otidiano, Juan Manuel Pérez from Asociación Patás, Juan Cabrera, Poderosa Mining Company has been funding Patás Association. Thank you all for the scientific, social, and environmental work in the creation of this new variety resistant to climate change. I would like to thank Agromin for giving us a chance to share the results of this strategic alliance between mining and agriculture and the benefits of the producers of this influence area. Thank you. Thank you, Manuel Gastelo, and congratulations again. And congratulations to the whole team, to the whole winning team. Such an interesting work with sustainability by showing that agriculture and mining can coexist. Now we will be presenting the award winners. Gunther Mann, he is a community manager of Cerro Verde, and he represents the second team virtuous cycle of agriculture in La Joya region. Congratulations, and before hearing him, we're going to be watching a short video on the second prize winner.
La joya tradicionalmente se dedica a la ganadería.
Traditionally, the Joya was focused on livestock, cattle, raising,
No se haga de acuerdo a las necesidades.
develop but do not necessarily comply with the needs. We had suffer a huge crisis. Therefore, we need to rethink our planning because this will help us work with water management and provide profitability for all the different sectors in our district. We work jointly with the water irrigation associations. We asked for the support of Cerro Verde Mining Company, and we started with the improvement of the irrigation channels. Demonstration parcels in La Joya Nueva and La Joya Antigua were built, funded by Cerro Verde Mining Company. The sectors of these two Joyas, it will plant avocado and granite. The irrigation system that we used in La Joya was a gravity system. We were unable to use the technified aspersion method or drop method since it was inefficient, and it was also water sources were polluted, and we were unable to use this technified technique. But because of the treatment plant in La Enlosada, we got improvement, a better quality of water, therefore using these irrigation methods. We were able to export our products because they're free of pollution. We were able to see that as women we could achieve many things. We are looking at our progress and success. The needs of the agriculture and livestock production sector, and the joining of the efforts of the mining company and the community, we were able to look for solutions. This created an open dialogue, roundtable discussions, and solutions of and alternatives that were found in between these three different stakeholders. Finally, the district is the final winner. The whole district will grow, and we believe that we are going through the right path, the path that will look at the future of future generations, because it will lead up to the well-being that we all want for our children. Another quite interesting project, Gunter Cuentas Huaman. Congratulations. We would like to hear your words. Good evening, everyone. I would like to congratulate the organizing committee of Agromin, the second Agromin convention. And I just want to also share the thanks to all the team members of the award-winning project. We focus on this integrated solution by starting to strengthen farmers' productivity. In order to be more productive, realize they have to associate and move from the use of more profitable resources such as the grape, granite, and avocado plantations, so that they were able to trade their products directly to the market in a safe way by optimizing the use of water resources. We would like them to thank the producers, farmers, thanks to their commitment by being more competitive and for looking at the well-being of their families. So thank you to all of them as well. Thank you, Gunter. Thank you for participating and for sharing this sustainable project. Thank you, Gunter Rentes. This could also be replicated and to all other team members that collaborate with all of you. The videos that we sharing in this closing ceremony were presented along the days of the event in the mining fair. And the cherry on top, we will get some gifts to the winners. Encyclopedia from Costco and the Amazon region, and baby alpaca shawl. And this is just a small gift that will arrive to you on behalf of Agromin, the second Agromin convention, for your hard work and commitment on the projects that you have developed. That could be used as good examples so that others could also work on that same line, because this does not only mean to be part of award, but basically to create development and to look for the development of communities. Now we will have a special occasion. As we said, we have these 3 long days of hard work, great presentations, and we would like to briefly share with you all the different activities that took place along these 3 days of the second convention Agromin 2021 virtual platform. Let's have a look at it together.
Agromin, evento pionero, y visualiza esos dos sectores.
Agromin emphasizes on work of 2 different sectors, has become a technical visionary platform that provides technical and social solutions to face the challenges of these 2 sectors, because Peru is a land of agriculture and mining. I would like to thank you all and invite you to join the virtual platform. A productive alliance in between mining and agriculture is possible. We will benefit from that specific strong alliance. And the mining in energy ministry, we believe that mining can live together with agriculture. We should pay attention to the agricultural and mining activities because of the high impact that both have and the generation of job opportunities and the improvement of quality of life of people, especially the most vulnerable.
Y este ha sido un breve resumen de
been a short video summarizing these 3 days. We can have different takeaways. I hope you enjoy the different opportunities provided by this event. Coming to an end, we would like to invite the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Diego Llosa, who will be presenting the final remarks of today's event. Thank you. This is Diego Llosa from the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and Tourism. Thank you. I would like to congratulate and welcome all the participants of Agrominera. It is a pleasure to be at the very end of this event, of this important conference on behalf of the Vice Ministry of Trade and Tourism, especially on behalf of Roberto Sanchez. He sends you uh, greetings. Unfortunately, he cannot join us today, but he said me to give these closing remarks. We would like to thank the president of this convention and the whole committee by following these three logic: agriculture and mining, joining forces throughout these 3 days. I also join the congratulations to both teams, both winners who were just recently presented. I know that along these 3 days, which were actually pretty well summarized, reflects how agriculture and mining are key sectors for the development of the country. From foreign trade, both represent more than 75 of our total exports, and jointly from January to September this year, 30 more than 30,000 US dollars. They definitely contribute to the economic reactivation and job employment in Peru. Both sectors, even though we had the effects of the pandemic, both have recovered and even exceed the pre-pandemic times due to volume or prices. And as of September, mining has had a 30% growth, and the agribusiness, a resilient sector that do not stop during the pandemic, kept on growing in 2020, and along 2021 it got up to more than 19% growth. On especially the importance of two sectors important for the government. Therefore, we congratulate these spaces that allow the exchange of information, experiences on these two different sectors, by showing in their drivers that can coexist, and through their development we could work on the path towards the development for direct benefits in the Peruvian population. Peru is leading mining industries. We are also leading on agro exports with avocado, mangoes, berries, among other different products that are well placed globally, but showing the variety production that we can provide to the world with high standards. This year, we expect the agribusiness get new records numbers by exceeding 8 million US dollars of FNO. Other times have experienced such a good boom like these years, and Our export will probably get record values this year because of the different mining projects and of course due to the commodity prices globally. I think it's important to highlight this fact because the results coming out from these two sectors are due to the effort and hard work of lots of Peruvians that are linked to these two sectors and the challenges that we have at the public level to provide a legal framework to support these two sectors. We are open for a dialogue in between these two sectors, especially for the development of SMEs, corporations, producer associations, micro companies, and all that are related to family farming. Those are sectors that create direct and indirect employment that influence not only direct employees, as I've heard, they also connected to other different activities such as tourism, gastronomy, agribusiness could also create an interesting value chain, seed storage, transformation, technical assistance, logistics. The same applies for mining, where there are services that could be exported from Peru to the world, and this is the main example to show that we can create more dynamism in our economy. And on our ministry, we are working to be more competitive to provide the best business climate for internalization of these two sectors. Again, I would like to emphasize the commitment of the ministry to work with in these two different sectors by creating opportunities for the population and contributing to a quality of life for Peruvians by always thinking on social inclusion and sustainable development of our population. I hope that by next year we can meet in this third edition of the convention. Thank you again. Thank you, Vice Minister of. Thank you very much. I would like to ask all authorities to keep the videos on in order to take a family photo. This will be the final family photo, like if we were on stage in a face-to-face meeting. Thank you to speaker, panel members, moderators, sponsors, media partners, promoters, all of you who were part of this second edition of the convention Agromin, and all of you who are watching us, who have been following us for these 3 days. We hope we cover all your expectations. We believe that we can get up to a better future. We need to align forces. We need to create changes. Changes are possible, but we need to probably do things differently. Thank you again, and until our next session, maybe let's cross fingers face to face. So see you next time. Have a good night.
Muchas gracias, hasta pronto.
Hasta la próxima. Gracias, viceministro. Perdón por el error.
No, no te preocupes.
Todo muy bien. Felicitaciones.